Morning. Welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum here at the Institute of Politics. My name is Natasha Pereira, and I'm a sophomore at the college and a member of the Student Forum Committee here at the IOP. We've got a packed house here tonight, so before we kick things off, I just want to note two reminders. Please take a moment now to silence your cell phones, and in the event of an emergency, please note our two exits on the JFK Street side and the Park Street side. All right, please join me in welcoming Harvard College undergraduate Ehud Olmert.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the JFK Junior Forum at the Institute of Politics. My name is Ehud Olmert, and I'm a freshman at the college studying computer science and economics, and I'm also a member of the JFK Junior Forum Committee. Tonight, we have the pleasure of hearing from former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. Prime Minister Olmert served as the 12th Prime Minister of Israel from 2006 to 2009, leading the country during a pivotal period in Middle Eastern history. Before ascending to the premiership, he served as the mayor of Jerusalem for a decade, significantly developing the city's infrastructure and international standing. And he has also held senior cabinet positions, including Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Industry and Trade, and Minister of Finance. Throughout his career, Prime Minister Olmert has been deeply engaged with advancing negotiations with and proposing comprehensive frameworks that could lead to stability in the region. Since leaving office, he has remained an influential voice on Israeli politics and regional security. Moderating tonight's forum is Professor Tarek Masoud. Professor Masoud is the Ford Foundation Professor of Democracy and Governance at the Harvard Kennedy School. A leading scholar of Middle Eastern politics and democratization, his research examines political development, including transitions from democracy to authoritarianism. His expertise on the Middle East's complex political landscape makes him uniquely positioned to guide tonight's conversation. Please join me in welcoming former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and Professor Tarek Masoud to the stage.
You know, when the undergraduate was just reading your bio, I reflected on the fact that your premiership was during my first year on the Harvard faculty. And if you had told me during my first year on the Harvard faculty, when I was like struggling to try to get tenure and thinking it would never happen, that in 17 years I'd be sitting on this stage with the former Prime Minister of Israel, I would have said, give me the number of your drug dealer. Okay. So I have been given something to read before we dive into tonight's event. Look, we're going to talk about some difficult things, and these difficult things that we talk about often generate intense emotions that sometimes express themselves in the form of protest. And what I want to say to everybody here is that, look, we have policies at the Kennedy School that are designed to ensure that events like this are events where we learn something. And so, three things. You've got to let the speaker speak. You've got to let people hear the speaker. So that means no blocking screens, no blocking people's views. And then finally, if you are moved to object to something that the speaker or the moderator says, reserve that passion for the Q&A period when you can channel it in the form of a very sharply worded but civil question, which ends in a question mark, that will demonstrate why one of us is wrong and you are right. And so I know the reading of these policies was utterly unnecessary, but nonetheless, I'm performing my responsibility. The other thing I should say is that we were going to be joined today as well by Dr. Nasser Al-Qidwa, who is really your partner in peacemaking and in proposing a path forward for Palestinians. Unfortunately, he could not be with us because he's been called to urgent work in Palestine, but we have extended an invitation to him for a one-on-one, and I prefer that, frankly, because then we get to talk about you.
But, Professor, I'm sorry, I have to intervene.
Yes?
There was another reason why he couldn't make it. Because like other Palestinians, he didn't get a visa to America.
Right.
okay?
Well, thank you for pointing that out, yes.
You know,
Okay, that was...
present-day America.
Yeah, well...
All right.
Okay, received without comment. Okay, so look, we could spend, we don't have a ton of time, unfortunately, and we could spend a lot of time talking about what's in the news, but my ambition for this series is for us really to get to deeper issues that will help shed light on some of the enduring features of this conflict. So I actually want to start not by talking about the news, but by talking about you and getting something of the origin story of Ehud Olmert. So, when I was preparing for this interview, I was reading about your family background, which of course is well known to a lot of people, but you were referred to as a Likud prince. You grew up in the aristocracy of the revisionist Zionist movement. And then when you became the mayor of Jerusalem, you were considered somebody who was really trying to cement the hold of the Jewish community on the city of Jerusalem. And so how does that person who is, starts life as what you might define maybe imperfectly as a hardliner become, one of the principal and most passionate advocates for a Palestinian state and one of the most insistent critics of Israel's treatment of the Palestinians?
First of all, I was a hardliner,
Yeah.
okay? So I'm not trying to somehow evade what is well known and certainly well known by many Israelis. Some of them I can see here, so they would immediately say, hey, be careful about the facts. Like many Israelis, when I was thinking and I was talking about the Palestinian issue, which has become a major part of our lives since 1967, when I was growing up, when I was becoming a very active person in Israeli politics, we all looked at it, or many of us looked at it, and I was one of those who looked at it from a certain distance. I never really lived with Palestinians or that I was acquainted with the day-to-day lives and problems and difficulties and constraints of the Palestinians. I talked about it from a distance of like a philosophical view, a Jewish view, the euphoric spirit that characterized the attitude of many Israelis after the Six-Day War and the glorious victory, which was for us, for many of us, was a turning point in our lives and so on. And then I was elected mayor of Jerusalem, and for the first time, I had to deal not with the issue, not with the philosophical dimension, not with the historical memories, but with the lives of almost 300,000 Palestinians that live in the city, and I was in charge of them because I was their mayor. And when I started to look into how they live and how we treat their life's needs and what is going on in the so-called United City of Jerusalem, I found that the United City of Jerusalem is divided, is not united, that there are two cities. And that was already more than 25 years after the city was united. It was not in the beginning, not was in the first 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I saw the city in the west side of Jerusalem is a modern city with lots of difficulties and problems and constraints and contradictions between different parts of the population, the Jewish population. But basically modern city. And then there is the east side of Jerusalem, which is still somewhere in the end of the 19th century, with major problems. And as much as I tried to cope with these problems and to solve some of the problems, I found out that there is no way that the city will ever be really united under the sovereignty, the exclusive sovereignty of the State of Israel. And I made extraordinary efforts to get more financing and more support from the government. I had enormous political power, relatively speaking, for a mayor, because I was the first Likud mayor of the city of Jerusalem ever.
Yeah.
And I was elected, which at that time was seen as a great political victory. I defeated Tarek by a margin of 25%, which was, a signal for something that yet to come in terms of my political career. So I had this, and there was no way that I could solve it. And at 25 years that my predecessor was mayor of Jerusalem, there wasn't one school built in the east side of Jerusalem. At the 10 years that I was mayor, I built 10 new schools, okay? And 18 new schools in the 10 years. And I invested, I don't know how much more money in the infrastructure and in the housing, but nothing was coming even close to cope with the real problems. And the more I lived with it, the more it just came to my heart to say, basically, if this is how we keep the residents of Jerusalem, which is, the primary place in the entire area which is now occupied by the State of Israel, and this is part of Israel, and it has been united, it has been integrated into the State of Israel. How will we live with 3 more million people living in the West Bank and the others that live in Gaza, and provide them the basic?
You have several million Israeli Arabs. I mean,
They also were discriminated for many years by us, let's face it.
Fair enough, but I'm just trying to understand, it sounds to me like what you're saying is about the futility of Arab-Jewish integration, not about the occupation.
No, it is different. It's different, but it's different because first and foremost, the Israeli Arabs they can vote. And they have political representation in the Israeli Knesset, which is not insignificant. There are many difficulties and problems, and I was trying to cope with it when I was prime minister in a major way. But they have political rights. And the Palestinians don't have a right. They don't have rights, they don't have a voting right, they don't have political freedom, and they are not supposed to express the discontent because that can be treated by the government.
Palestinian residents of Jerusalem who have the ID card and not the citizenship. Right.
And they have already ID cards, but they can't vote.
Right.
They can vote for the municipality, which they never did.
Yeah.
But they can't vote for the Knesset. They are not Israeli citizens.
Yeah.
And I just reached the conclusion that this is not, to this day, if you ask me, what do you think about the West Bank? Is the West Bank the historic land of the Jewish people?
Yeah.
My answer is yes. This is the historic land of the Jewish people. I never changed my mind. But in order to make peace, you have to make up your mind. How do you want to ever make peace with Palestinians?
Yeah.
How? Can you, keep them out of the territories? Keep them in without rights? Keep them with the kind of a loose framework of autonomy, without political rights, without freedom of movement?
Yeah.
Is it possible? So if you really want to make peace and you want to pull out from the territories, yes, you want to pull out from territories which you believe historically are part of your memories, of your prayers, but which inevitably, if you want, you have to make up your mind. What do you prefer most? You want to control these territories at the expense of losing the chance to ever change the relations between us and the Palestinians, or you have to make concessions, painful, difficult, hard. I can tell you that you may ask me later, but when I was sitting with Abu Mazen, and I proposed to him to pull out from most of the territories, including dividing that part of Jerusalem, which is not really Israeli, which has never been Jewish, which is, Beit Hanina and Kafar Akeb and all these neighborhoods and the refugee camp of Shuafat have never been part of Jewish history anyway. But when I proposed it to it, I felt like I'm fainting. out of the emotional pressure that I'm the first Israeli prime minister, Jewish prime minister, that I proposed what is considered and will be interpreted as the division of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
But I did it because we have to make choices.
Yeah.
And you become prime minister to take decisions, not to run away from decisions. And that was the only way that I could fulfill the mission of being prime minister for the Jewish people.
So 2 things. You are a very popular person and somebody keeps pinging you and sending you text messages. Can you shut off your phone? Do you want to do, because I keep hearing your phone in your pocket. Yes. So that's number 1.
Yeah, all these
stop
Israeli,
texting the Prime
all these
Minister.
Israeli
Okay.
guys, all these Israeli guys that are listening to me now and they disagree with me.
Yeah, well, you know, you identified obviously some of the dilemmas of the occupation, you know, in your view, unsustainable to govern several million Palestinians without giving them rights. I mean, what do you say to somebody who says, well, there's an easy solution there, just integrate them and give them rights?
Yeah, look, there are approximately 2 million Arabs living in Israel, Israeli citizens, which, you know, they would, when asked, they would say, we are Palestinians. Okay, there are 3.5 million Palestinians living in the West Bank. There are 2.2 Palestinians living in Gaza. Altogether, there are about 7.5 to 8 million Palestinians and 8 million Jews living together. This is a prescription to put all of us in the same political framework, yes, is a prescription for eternal confrontation and war. Or who governs whom? Who has the rights and who doesn't have the rights? And since...
Isn't that what democracy works out? You know, you go and you vote and whoever wins a majority. And, you know, you could imagine in a situation like that, very interesting coalitions emerging, secular Arabs and secular Jews, religious Arabs and religious Jews. Like, what's the problem? I'm an American.
Now you guys, you understand why he's the professor in Harvard and I am a political person from Israel.
Because it's what I said was stupid.
That I didn't mean. But I'll tell you something. You know, we have to overcome, you know, there are sometimes temptations of this nature that perhaps, you know, we can somehow make like, you know, talking about one state for 2 people, which is popular in certain circles in Israel and amongst others. We can't run away from a courageous and explicit solution. And the solution is separation. Only separation and granting the Palestinians the opportunity to exercise their rights for self-determination will eventually build up the kind of rapport, the kind of rapprochement of relations that will be entirely different from what they were and they are now.
Yeah.
But without it, it will continue to be a source of confrontations, of hatred, of a sense of deprivation. You control everything, you are wealthy, you are rich, we are poor. How can we match what you have attained for so many years when you bring us into the one political framework?
Won't that happen with separation too? I mean, why do you think that separation would result in you know, a Palestinian state that wants to live peacefully side by side with Israel? Well, you know, somebody might say, Ehud Olmert, we ran the experiment, courtesy of Ehud Olmert and Ariel Sharon. We withdrew from the Gaza Strip. The Palestinians were left to their own devices, and they did not focus on developing the Gaza Strip. So, you know, it's not like separation is a solution to the
Gaza Strip was developed, unfortunately, mostly underground than on ground.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
yeah,
yes.
Okay. But what about the point I'm trying to get you to react to?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. There are many good reasons that can be explained better by Palestinians why, after the disengagement from Gaza, they didn't react in what was supposed to be the expected manner, which is to try and concentrate in the providing the needs of Gaza, developing Gaza, rather than continuing the the confrontation and the hostilities and the violence against the State of Israel. None of these have to do with what happened on the 7th of October. And the attempt to use the disengagement as an excuse to say that this caused the total failure of Israel to defend itself on the 7th of October is absolutely untrue.
Well, the failure of Israel to defend itself on the 7th of October, I think you're right. But what about the, so I think the state of Israel and its inability to cope with the Hamas incursion is, there's lots of questions about that failure, and nobody has yet been held accountable for it. But you could make the argument that the disengagement absolutely helped build up some of the raw materials that led to Hamas launching this attack. Look, when you were...
I know where you're pushing to.
Oh, okay. Do you want to let me push?
And I'll be responsive.
Yeah. Okay. So look, in 2005, you did an interview with Wolf Blitzer about the disengagement, and you said, "Look, it's a calculated risk, but I trust President Abbas, and we trust the good intentions of the Palestinians." Benjamin Netanyahu appeared on the same show, and he said, "If we pull out of Gaza, it will become a base of terror." Okay, and fast forward, looks like he was right and you were wrong. Would you admit that?
First of all, that's what he said afterwards.
That's what he said before.
No. But before he voted for the disengagement, and without his votes,
he quit the government because of the disengagement.
We wouldn't have had a majority.
Yeah, okay.
So only by his votes in the Knesset and in the cabinet, we had the kind of majority that we needed in order to make this disengagement possible in the first place. This is about sometimes the contradictions, to put it in a very mild manner, that comes from Netanyahu. But this is a side point.
Okay, we'll get...
When someone said that terror will continue, he was right. He was right.
Okay.
All right.
So why...
But then when he became prime minister,
yeah,
yes, he financed the same organization which has perpetrated this terror throughout.
He financed Hamas by giving them suitcases of Qatari cash.
Not only but suitcases, but yes, suitcases as well as direct financing by Hamas in the volume of hundreds of millions of dollars,
so,
billions of dollars.
I put this exact proposition to Tzipi Livni. And Tzipi Livni, who there's no love lost between her and Benjamin Netanyahu, basically said to me, "Come off it, man. Like, the reason that they were channeling money to Gaza is for the people of Gaza to actually eat." And she said, "You, Professor Masoud, if Benjamin Netanyahu had said, I refuse to channel this money to Hamas, you would have been the first one criticizing the government of Israel for denying Palestinians the resources they need to live a decent life."
Tarek, I thought that you wanted me to argue with Netanyahu. Now I understand that you want me to argue with my former foreign minister. Okay.
Ultimately, you're going to argue with me, but yeah, okay.
I'll tell you something. The financing of Hamas became a necessity when Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, decided to stop all the financing that he was channeling on a weekly, on a monthly basis to Gaza, because all this money was taken by Hamas for the building up the military infrastructure of Hamas. And he stopped the financing it. So this is the reason that that they needed the money from Netanyahu or from Qatar with the assistance of Netanyahu was because they didn't get the money from the Palestinian Authority. And it has nothing to do with the needs of the Palestinian citizens for their livelihood, because it was stopped by Abu Mazen, the Palestinian leader, the president of the Palestinian Authority, because he said the money is not going to the Palestinian people, it's going to the army, it's going to the tunnels, it's going to the building up the rockets and so on and so forth. And what Netanyahu did is when he replaced the Palestinian Authority in providing the money not for the Palestinian people, for the Palestinian terrorists.
See, but so I guess my question to you is, wasn't all of this predictable? I mean, the disengagement and the way that it happened, and by the way, even the rationale for the disengagement. I mean, you know, again, we make it sound like this was an interim step on the way to a two-state solution. You know, Dov Weissglass, who was your advisor, but before that he was Ariel Sharon's advisor, said, this is actually our way of putting the whole peace process in formaldehyde. This is, you know, so this is a way of freezing the political process with the Palestinians. So, I mean, all of this was entirely predictable.
All of this was not entirely predictable. We were taking risks, and had I believed and I succeeded in finalizing the peace process. I mean, you entirely put this on the side, but this has been...
We're going to get to that, I promise.
Okay, no, but this was at the core of everything that we were doing. What we did when we started the disengagement, we then wanted to carry on, and until much later, they didn't have all these tunnels built underground. At the time that I was Prime Minister and I was negotiating with Abu Mazen, we were coming quite close to conclude a comprehensive deal, which have included Gaza as part of it.
Yeah.
All that you're talking about, that you say is predictable, it became predictable lots after Netanyahu took over and refused to negotiate with the Palestinian Authority for a comprehensive peace, and rather flirted with Hamas and assisted Hamas in whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
So it's an entirely different thing.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'll tip my hand and say, you know, I am, like you, inclined to blame Benjamin Netanyahu for a lot of things.
Yeah,
but
you're doing the right thing.
Let's you know. But Ehud Olmert, does Ehud Olmert bear some of the responsibility for the catastrophe that we find ourselves in? Okay, so for example, clearly Hamas today, okay, is a nihilistic terrorist group that is capable of the kind of barbarity that we saw on October 7th. But I offered a proposition to Brett Stevens, who is sitting here, and he thought what I am about to say was totally stupid, so of course I'm going to say it again, which is that I'm not sure...
I'll never repeat what he said.
I'm not sure that in 2006, Hamas was the same organization that it is in 2025 or even 2020. That basically, organization like Hamas has two types of people in it. It has people who want to kill and people who want to run in elections and be mayors, okay? And in 2006, January 2006, Hamas ran an election and they won and got a significant enough share of the vote that they could form the government. And instead of dealing with them, your government said, absolutely not, these people are beyond the pale, we will not deal with them. And the hypothesis I offer is that when that happened, it gave the upper hand to the violent people, saying, look, you know, running an election, that's a fool's game. Nobody will deal with you. And it consequently gives the people who want violence and resistance and to build tunnels the upper hand and shapes the evolution of the group. Is that totally wrong?
You're largely wrong.
Largely wrong.
Largely.
Tell me why.
Yes. Number one, we started a political process with the Palestinians and with the political leadership of the Palestinians, which is the president of the Palestinian Authority, who was elected by all of the Palestinian people, okay? And we kept negotiating with him all the time. Now, we say that we will not negotiate with the government which was in opposition to the president of the Palestinian Authority. We had to make a choice. Who do we prefer? The Hamas, which has not, was not hiding their attitude and the lack of any desire to negotiate with Israel or to deal with Israel or to make peace with Israel, or to deal with the president of the Palestinian Authority, which is the governing body. It's like, you know, you telling me in the United States of America, you don't deal with the president of the United States of America, but you deal with someone inferior to him in terms of his position because he, no matter whether you like his position or don't like your position, he is the president, and you deal with the president, and we dealt with the president of the Palestinian Authority, and for years.
Didn't get you anywhere.
Hang on, it almost got me into a peace treaty.
Yeah,
we
we'll
were
talk
as
about
closest.
that.
Okay, it's true that, look, I'm not in a position, I'm not trying to, and I will not try to, and I will not fall into any other traps that you are lying, okay, along the road, to justify the Palestinians or to try and offer them excuses for what they didn't do. They failed. The Palestinians failed to respond to the most far-reaching peace plan that I presented them with for a two-state solution on the basis of 67 borders and so on and so forth. I will not be tempted to accuse Netanyahu for the terror and the horrific and barbaric murderous activities of Hamas. They did it because they are murderers and they are killers and they ought to be eliminated, and every attempt to eliminate the murderers was the right action by the Israeli government. So let's put things in the right place. Then we can ask ourselves all kinds of questions. Could we do things in somewhat different way? Could we be smarter? Could we be sometimes more moderate? Could we be more appealing to the Palestinian leadership? Could we offer something else that may have changed the nature of Hamas? I don't think so. I don't think they could have changed the nature of Hamas, but at the time, I can say only to speak about the time that I was Prime Minister. At the time that I was Prime Minister, and a few years later, Hamas didn't build anything underground. They didn't have operational underground tunnels. And their threat to Israel was relatively limited, and we responded to it effectively at the time, and there was nothing similar to what it developed to be afterwards. So, you know, what you do is you can't take the 2015 and blame someone that was a prime minister until 2009 for what happened much later. It happened much later largely because they are a terrorist organization and also because we were not smart enough to try and move forward with a peace plan that may have changed the basic parameters of where we were living.
So I want to get to the peace plan, but before I just want one more point on Gaza for you to tell me that I'm wrong. I mean, you don't think, though, a prime minister, I mean, I ask this question in a stupid way, because of course you're not going to think what I'm about to ask you if you think it. But, you know,
don't underestimate yourself, Tarek. You are quite smart.
When you were the prime minister, remember, this is the time when, you know, your senior advisor, Dov Weissglass, said, you know, you had a policy of counting every single calorie that went into Gaza. And your senior advisor said, we don't want to starve the Gazans, but we want to put them on a diet. You don't think that kind of frankly dehumanizing approach to the Gaza portfolio helped lead us to where we are?
I'm afraid that this is really, you have a...
That was a dumb question.
A mistake, no.
Okay.
First of all, because Dov Weissglass was not my advisor. He retired when we changed over. But number two, we never had a policy of counting calories in Gaza. Never, never. On the contrary, I can tell you that on the first meeting I had with Mansour Abbas, Mahmoud Abbas, President of the Palestinian Authority, which was on the 23rd of December, 2006. Subsequently, of course, when we had this Annapolis meeting a year later, everyone called it until today the Annapolis process, but it started long before Annapolis, a year before. And on the first meeting, when Abu Mazen asked me, you know, why don't you move all the monies that you owe us? Because, you know, we collect all the customs of the Palestinians. And I said, how much do you need? And he said, I need $50 million. I said, no. And he said to his people, you see, when it comes to money, these guys are very...
And then you said, here, 100.
No, you need 150 because you need it as well for Gaza, and we are going to give you every penny that belongs to you.
Yeah.
So the policy on this particular case,
Okay, fair.
factual,
Thank you for that
was
correction.
entirely different.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about your peace proposal, because this is a very important, I think, episode in the annals of peacemaking between Palestinians and Israelis. So a few weeks ago, I had sitting in this chair your very good friend, Alan Dershowitz,
Yes.
Professor Alan Dershowitz. And I was arguing with Alan Dershowitz about his account of the failure of negotiations during the end of the Clinton administration at Camp David and then later continuing in Taba. I was making the argument that he had it wrong, and he says, it doesn't matter. 7 years later, my good friend Ehud Olmert showed up and gave them everything. He gave them 100%, and they said no. Is he right?
No. They didn't accept. They didn't say yes. They didn't say yes, but they never said no. Now, this is not insignificant. Of course, the bottom line is that they didn't say yes, which was an exceptional historical opportunity. Had they said yes at that time, lives would have been different for us in Israel, for us in the Middle East, for all the Palestinians, and perhaps far more than just the Middle East. Okay, so they didn't say yes. But at no time did they say no. Yeah. And the fact that Abu Mazen since then on very many occasions kept reminding us that he didn't say no, I interpreted it and I understood it as a signal that he is ready to renew negotiations and perhaps to say yes when, if it will develop. Yeah. The Israeli government at that time was not interested in negotiating with Abu Mazen, so you never know. Yeah. But I have to give him that credit. And he kept, every now and then he even, passed me a message. Yeah. He said, don't say that I said no because I never said no. And it's true. He never said no. However, he never said yes. Yeah, fair enough. This is something that can't be forgotten and can't be forgiven. Okay, fair enough. So it's that episode is always brought up as Exhibit A in the case that Palestinians are not interested in a state of their own. They are interested in denying you, the Jewish people, your state. But I want to ask you, I read this story, and I have a lot of questions about it. So first of all, you proposed the map to him after you have already announced your resignation. That's true.
Okay. So you're a lame duck. And you wouldn't let Mahmoud Abbas take the map to his map experts to look at it. Okay. And then on top of that, your foreign minister is going to them, according to Condi Rice, and saying, don't take this deal. And so, we'll give you a better deal. He doesn't have, Ehud Olmert doesn't have any political credibility. And let's say that Mahmoud Abbas had said, you know what, we'll take the deal. I don't need to take the map back to my people. I trust you, I love you, Ehud Olmert, I love your blue eyes.
Why
Here,
not?
I'll sign the deal. You wouldn't have been able to get it through the Knesset. You didn't have the mandate within Israel to actually get it through. So what are we talking about here? Okay, that's my provocation.
Brilliantly worded.
Okay.
Now, let's take it one by one.
Okay.
Number one, I had a majority in Parliament as far as this issue is concerned. My difficulties were different, as you well know. Yeah. You may not want to touch it because you don't want to embarrass me, I understand, okay. But, I was under investigations and so on and so forth. And strangely enough, unlike others, I didn't want to break all the legal system of Israel. Yes. And abolish the Supreme Court of Israel. Okay. But on these issues, I had a majority and I had a stable majority. Now, the one thing. Another thing is that When I proposed to him, it was at the end of the process. It wasn't a beginning. Suddenly I woke up one morning and I said, hey, you know, I'm about to leave. So this is the peace treaty that I offer you.
Yeah.
This is something that has been negotiated. I met with Abu Mazen at least 36 times, each time for hours. Never in the history of the conflict between us and the Palestinians, the two leaders met so many times,
Why didn't
so
you give
much
him the map?
time.
Why didn't you let him take the map?
Now, I showed him the map.
Yeah.
There is a big map that the intelligence prepared for me. And he says, let me take it. I said, President, sign it first. I'll have a copy and you'll have a copy. He asked me why. I said, I'll tell you why. Because I have this feeling that if you will take the map, you will leave. If you will not come back, in 2 years' time, you will come back to the next Prime Minister of Israel and you will say, listen, this I already have. Now, what do you give me more? No, this is not my game. If you are ready to sign it, you will take it. This is my proposal. There is nothing else. And when he said that he is not certain that he understands all the peculiarities and the technicalities, I said, fine. Let's bring the two experts of maps, yours and mine, together with us tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, we'll sit and we'll find out everything. He said, fine, let's do it. However, 2 days later, I got a telephone call from Saeb Erekat, and he says, President forgot that he has to be today in Amman.
Yeah.
So when he comes back, he will, of course, come and have the meeting. I'm still waiting.
What do you think happened?
I don't know. And now I want to refer to two things because you quoted Tzipi Livni. I don't remember. I don't know if when you interviewed her, you asked her this question.
Yeah. No.
You were nice to her. You are not nice to me. Huh? Okay. I'll tell you something. She denies it, and I don't want to question her integrity. She was a very good Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Yeah.
She was a Vice Prime Minister. And she, as far as I was concerned, I thought that she could be Prime Minister, and I would never say anything inappropriate about someone that worked for me, that I thought was loyal to me, and I have no reason to think that she was not. Okay, so I don't know who said what and why. What I want to say is this: had Abu Mazen signed, we talked. Okay, let's assume that he signs. How do we move forward?
Yes.
I told him, I had a plan, ready. I said to him, listen, if you sign, we take a flight tomorrow to the General Assembly to the United Nations. At that time, there was the annual General Assembly meeting. We'll go to the Security Council of the United Nations, and we'll present this plan, and we'll have a vote on this plan. And we'll have 15 members of the Security Council of the United Nations will vote for it. It will be 15-0.
Okay.
Then we'll go to the General Assembly of the United Nations, and 195 countries will vote for it. Maybe there will be a couple of countries that will not vote for it, but all of the world. Then we'll go to a joint session of Congress, together with the United States President. Yes. Then we'll go to the European Parliament, and then we will invite all the world leaders to come to Jerusalem to the point which will separate between that part and the other part, and we will ask them to come and join us in support of this plan, and they all will come, from the President of Japan or from the Prime Minister of Japan. Pamper will not come, and to any President and Prime Minister in the world, and there will be a show of force, and then we'll go for elections. Sounds beautiful, yes. And then we'll go for elections, and you will win 70%, I will win 70%.
And you'll get the Nobel Peace, and you'll get the Nobel Peace Prize.
I will never take it from Trump.
Why didn't he say yes? You must have a hunch.
Maybe because he thought, as now retroactively you interpret it, that I was a lame duck. Had I been his advisor, not his other side for negotiation, to say to him, this is the best thing that can happen to you.
Yeah.
That Olmert proposed to you on behalf of the state of Israel a peace plan.
Yeah.
That you said yes. And then another prime minister of Israel came and says, I'm against the peace plan that my own country presented to you with. So it will be a win-win from both sides. I don't know. I can't explain. I can't speak for him. I can only say that this was an historic failure.
Einat Wilf, who came here also, has an explanation. Einat Wilf says that is the proof right there that these people do not want a state next to you.
All right. Listen, you know how many Israelis I know that I can argue with? Do you want me to start now? Einat Wilf. There are so many others that say, you know, that say
okay,
things.
Can I ask the question in a more hopeful way? Like, you have a deep faith that the Palestinian people want to live in a state side by side with your state. That if they are just given the right amount of land...
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that there is a likelihood that they will agree, that we have to make every possible effort to use all our power, to use all our resources, all our creativity, everything that we can in order to convince the Palestinians to negotiate with them in good faith, to create a genuine, serious, trustworthy dialogue with them in order to convince them that this is the best possible solution. First and foremost, this is the best possible solution for us. There is not any other. We have to rid ourselves for this situation that we are the occupiers of millions of people, keeping them without rights, without the freedom of movement, without the freedom of speech, and with many other things which take place in the West Bank now in the most violent and aggressive manner that I don't want to now to go into it, but that we can't afford ourselves to carry on living with it. And this is the best solution for us, and it's also the best solution for them. And I hope that if we will be creative enough and generous enough and resourceful enough and forthcoming enough, there is a genuine chance that we will be able to carry on and succeed. I don't say that they are passionately in favor of this, that there is nothing that they want more than two states. But this is the solution that fits our interests, and this is something that we need to work as much as we can in order to carry out.
Do you think, okay, so I want to talk a little bit now about your favorite topic, which is Bibi Netanyahu. And, you know, I want to say at the outset, you know, I try not to tip my hand on what I think, but, you know, I've just been tremendously admiring of you and of your willingness to criticize the conduct of the Netanyahu government and its prosecution of this war in Gaza. You've called it indiscriminate. You said that war crimes are being committed, and I recognize that that requires a lot of courage. And I just want to say that because the question I'm about to ask is fairly insolent. Let's look at the results of Benjamin Netanyahu's war, okay? So basically, Hamas has been killed, destroyed. Hezbollah, which is a major irritant not just to your country, but to the people of Lebanon, decapitated. He got Trump to bomb Iran, which, you know, nobody thought would be possible, and consequently set back the Iranian nuclear program and Iran's hegemonic ambitions. Iran's only state ally, Syria, gone. Wouldn't have happened without the war. The Houthis in Yemen, who have been attacking shipping, crippled, okay? And on top of all that, my social media feed is full of Arabs and Palestinians who are saying, we have to end this war with Israel. We have to, you know, we have been totally defeated. We have to drop violence. Hamas is done. Islamism is done. We need a new way. None of that happens without Bibi Netanyahu's very, you know, severe approach to October 7th and its aftermath. And it certainly wouldn't have happened, Mr. Prime Minister, if you had been in power and you did what you told Ezra Klein you would have done after October 7th, which is trade all the hostages for all the prisoners in Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. So don't you have to concede that Benjamin Netanyahu, that basically this is Benjamin Netanyahu's world and you and I are just living in it?
I don't know about me, but you certainly.
Okay, you can clap for that. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
There are so many things that I have to put in the right place that you are making a mistake about.
Yeah.
So we'll take it one by one.
Okay.
Carefully and slowly and moderately and in a very friendly manner.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, you failed to. I think you completely failed to mention. I'm sure that you forgot.
Yeah.
That
That's what it is.
the Empire State of Israel, with the most sophisticated F-35s and the most sophisticated tanks and the most sophisticated cyber systems
And
in
nuclear
the world,
weapons.
and
Nuclear weapons.
I don't know about and others, was fighting 2 years, not 1 week, not 1 month, not 2 months, 2 years, and to this day it still didn't destroy completely the Hamas. So this is for the presentation of the enormous military success. There are some doubts about the extent of this and the magnitude of this success. Let's put things in the right place to start with. That's number one. Number two, you have to ask yourself, how much did you achieve since January 24, okay? 24, a year and 10 months ago, militarily, that was the cost of what Israel pays for these military achievements. The loss of the support across the world, the boycotting, the anti-Israeli attitudes. Unfortunately, the source of it is, of course, the government actions or failures. But this is interpreted in many places across the world as an anti-Israeli, okay? And this is something that we have never experienced in all of the history of the State of Israel. I was fighting against Palestinians. I was destroying parts of Gaza. I was destroying part of Beirut. There were never such demonstrations, never such riots across the world as there are now after 2 years of fighting, after 75,000 Palestinians killed, after 2,000 Israelis killed, after so many hostages that were killed because the Israeli government turned down any attempt to make a deal at a time when it could have been done and saving so many Israeli hostages that were unfortunately were killed afterwards. So, I mean, the picture of the achievement is not exactly the same. And the fact is that the problem that I think we face today, perhaps it's also a source of hope, is that today Israel depends completely on one person. And this is not Netanyahu. This is the guy that Netanyahu works for.
Donald Trump.
It's Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So when Donald Trump says that to Bibi, you have to end the war, he ends the war. But the same ending of the war, under the same conditions, could have been done a year ago. Is this a victory? Is this an achievement? Am I supposed to be proud of the fact that we continued the fighting and lost hundreds of Israeli soldiers and destroyed the lives of so many hundreds of Israeli families as a result of this, and lost so many hostages and also killed so many non-involved Palestinians as a result of this, when the same plan under the same conditions could have been achieved a year ago or a year and a half ago? By the way, with all due respect, I congratulated everywhere I could. I was not invited to the Knesset session, okay? But not directly, I congratulated President Trump for the forceful decision to impose on the end of the war on Netanyahu. But somewhere, quietly, so that no one will hear, I also asked, why didn't you do it in January of 25? The same plan, the same thing, the same conditions, exactly the same things. So, bear me, okay? Forgive me if I'm not swept by the enthusiasm that has characterized your attitude to Benjamin Netanyahu.
So I appreciate that answer. Let me offer one potentially.
And yes, by the way,
Yeah.
I would have made a deal on the 8th of October to bring back all the hostages right away and to postpone any military action for a different period, a different time, and different circumstances. Yes, I would have done it. Yeah. Because this has polarized the state of Israel. What happened in the last 2 years with regard to the hostages has polarized the Israeli society. And the government of Israel was a prime factor that incited against different factions in Israeli society. We were never before as polarized and divided as we are. Yeah. Is this also an achievement that we should be proud of?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I want to be clear. It's.
I know that you don't think.
I don't.
No more.
But let me.
I don't blame you.
Let me ask you one other question to which maybe people in the audience will object. So, I am not a scholar of Zionism at all, but I do try to read, and I've long been taken by this essay by Ze'ev Jabotinsky called "The Wall," the Iron Wall.
Yeah.
And, Jabotinsky is the founder of the revisionist Zionist movement that is the basically intellectual precursor to the contemporary Likud party. Benjamin Netanyahu's father was a secretary to Jabotinsky.
He was not.
He wasn't?
No, of course not.
But they say he was. I didn't make it up.
He was.
Okay.
He was. I mean, look.
Okay, can we not argue about that? Let me get to the point.
No, I just want to take the opportunity that I sit with the dean of the Kennedy School.
I wish I were the dean of the Kennedy School. Do you know how much money I'd make?
Of the Kennedy School at Harvard University, and I can teach it something. He was the assistant of Professor Benjamin Aktzin, who was the secretary of Jabotinsky. And he was an assistant for a professor, which is a very important position. Don't take it lightly.
Okay. So one of the things I appreciate about Jabotinsky's essay, even though it's kind of hard for me as an Arab to read, is he is very clear-eyed about the nature of the conflict between Arabs and Jews in the Holy Land. And I'm going to probably caricature it too much, but the takeaway I get from it is he says, we are trying to displace them. There is no group of people on the planet that willingly acquiesces in sharing a piece of land that it didn't have to share before. And the Zionists who say, no, the Arabs are going to be fine with us because we're going to give them good roads and medical care are deluding themselves. What you have to do is you have to erect an iron wall. And now these are my words. You basically have to defeat them. You have to hand them defeat after defeat after defeat after defeat until they finally cry uncle and say, okay. And so, you probably grew up reading Jabotinsky. Number one, was Jabotinsky right, given that today we actually are seeing a lot of people basically cry uncle and say, we are reconciled to this country in our midst, we just want to live in peace with you. And consequently, was Benjamin Netanyahu a better student of Jabotinsky than you were?
My problem is that, you said before that you are not a scholar of the Israeli-Arab conflict, and you have proved it now.
Okay, what did I get wrong? No, good.
I apologize.
No.
It's unfair.
What did I get wrong?
Jabotinsky never said that we should displace the Arabs.
No, he literally said, he says, we are a colonial enterprise. We are trying to...
he didn't even think that we are colonial enterprise.
That's what he says in the Iron Wall.
No, he said that
people can Google
we are perceived by the Arabs to be. This is entirely different.
No, he says the Arabs are right in perceiving us that way.
No, that they, from their point of view, that when we come, they will perceive us to be
no,
colonizing.
he even says like the Sioux, the American Sioux, the Native Americans would no more give up, the Arabs would no more give up their land than the Native Americans would give up their rolling prairies.
He never said.
That's in the essay. Okay.
Tarek.
Okay, but just like
okay. No, we can argue.
Okay.
He never thought that this is their land. He always thought that this is our land and their land, and that we have to live together in the land which jointly.
Agreed. He definitely thought that the end point had to be coexisting with equal rights, but they wouldn't accept it.
The basic point, I think the point that...
Yes.
The important point,
yes.
not the mistakes that you made, but
okay.
the most important point is that Jabotinsky understood that the Zionist desire to return back to the land of Israel will almost inevitably create a confrontation.
Yeah.
And the only way to make sure that in this confrontation we will be able to prevail is to build the iron wall.
Yes.
Okay? But his desire and his dream and his philosophy was that not only that we have to find every possible way to live with Arabs, but he talked about, I can quote you.
He said when we have a Jewish prime minister, we'll have an Arab vice prime minister and vice versa.
So he talked about sharing with Palestinians or with Arabs that live in the land of Israel and not fighting with them. But in order to guarantee that when we come there, they will not displace us.
Yeah.
The only way to guarantee it is to have the iron wall.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay, so I guess...
do you think that when I was prime minister, we didn't have the iron wall? I even decided to build the Iron Dome and not Bibi.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, but I guess part of what I'm trying to ask is whether there is a, I will get beaten up for asking this question, but a slight silver lining to the catastrophe of the last 2 years, in that there is now an exhaustion with war and a recognition that you're never going to get rid of Israel. You're going to have to live side by side with the Israelis. If anybody was under any illusions about that, those illusions have been totally shattered.
I don't know who had illusions about that.
Hamas.
Let's face it. Look, Israel is an enormously powerful nation.
Nuclear weapons, right?
We have a very strong army, one of the strongest armies there are in the world.
Yes.
Okay? And I think that there was no doubt about that and no question about that. And as far as I'm concerned, I always had the confidence that under any circumstance, if Israel will be in a serious threat by any, we have enough power, without the assistance of anyone, we have enough power to defend ourselves. And this was manifested in this war. Unfortunately, it didn't have to take 2 years to prove it. It may have taken a lot shorter time in order to accomplish what we needed to accomplish militarily, rather than to continuing the war. And had Trump didn't force us to stop it, we may have continued it for another time, and maybe still it can erupt again, and I hope it won't. Okay? So we have the power to defend ourselves. What does it mean? What do we have to do? We have to fight with everyone, everywhere, all the time? Or we have to use that power and use the deterrence that this power creates in order to convince the potential rivals and enemies of the State of Israel that it's better or worse for them to live in peace with us. And this is what I hope we will try to do now with Syria, for instance, as an example. And that perhaps what we should try to do now with Lebanon, when Hezbollah has been eradicated as they were. So the question is always not just to thrive with this, military power for the sake of your power, but to see how you can use it in order to change the political circumstances that will provide the Israelis with the opportunity, first time in the modern history of our people, to live without fighting, without wars, without dangers.
Right. Okay, so there's a lot to continue with there, but I'm cognizant of time, and I know that I have to call on members of our very brilliant Harvard audience to ask questions. So we have 4 microphones, one here, you guys know where they are. So please line up at the mic. I just want to remind everybody again that when you ask a question, you are consenting to have your voice, visage recorded for all time and beamed throughout the known universe. And so why don't I start over here?
So this is going to be a simple question.
The best kind.
Given all the settlements in the West Bank and how, the West Bank keeps getting split more and more, do you think in the future there's any chance for your vision of a 2-state solution to happen, to go back to your vision, or is it gone, really?
No, it's
Thank
not
you.
gone. According to the plan that I have presented, actually that I presented to Abu Mazen when I was Prime Minister, but the one that I've published and signed jointly with Dr. Nasser al-Qudwa, who is the former foreign minister of the Palestinian Authority, we are talking about an annexation of 4.4% of the West Bank and a swap of territory equal size that was part of the State of Israel prior to 1967, which will become now part of the Palestinian state. And in the 4.4% of the territory, 82% of the Israelis living across the Green Line, the historic Green Line, including all the new neighborhoods in Jerusalem, live. In other words, by an annexation of 4.4%, you first of all solve the problem of 82% of the Israelis living across the Green Line, which is a major part of it. Then, for the 18% that will remain, which is still a considerable number of maybe 50 or 60,000, okay? Question is, what is the options for them? First option is that they can all be relocated into the 4.4%. In other words, they will still be in the territories, in what they call Judea and Samaria, but not in one part, but in another part, okay? So that's number one. And we can relocate all of the 18% into the 4.4%. There is enough place. The other alternative is to relocate them into the state of Israel. They don't want to live there. Okay, come over here. But if they still want to remain where they are, the Palestinians will agree, in as long as they will live in the Palestinian state. If they prefer the piece of land where they live, then okay, you can live there. But this is part of a Palestinian state. So the practical solution is still available. We need to want it. We need to campaign for it. We need to fight for it. We need a government that will propose it, and we need a Palestinian leadership that will be smart enough and courageous enough and foresighted enough to accept it, which they didn't up until now.
Mr. Prime Minister, the initial reaction I have to that is that I'd be very worried about the possibility of clashes between the settlers who decide to remain in the Palestinian state and Palestinians. And then, which could easily create a pretext for Israel to go back in to protect those people. And then there's the other question which one could naturally ask is, if there is a Palestinian state, again, how do you avoid the Gaza scenario that just like Gaza became a staging ground for attacks against Israel, now this broader Palestinian entity would be the same?
I'm afraid, Tarek, that I don't have a textbook answer. I don't know. This is something I will have to be very careful in monitoring and controlling and influencing and building up the better relations of trust and cooperation with the Palestinians in order to avoid it. Can I guarantee you now, before we go into this, all the complexities and the aspects that are involved in building it up, that I will be able to control it under every circumstance? I don't know. Do I have a feeling that this is impossible? No, it's not impossible. We can do it. We can try hard. We can be smarter. And what is more important, and this is something that is almost virtually impossible for an average Israeli, we have to be somewhat less arrogant. I know this is something that is too much to expect from the Israeli leaders, but that could be very helpful.
But
We'll be a
Mr.
little
Prime
bit
Minister,
less arrogant.
When Alan Dershowitz was here, one of the things he kept saying, he quoted Bill Clinton, who said, the problem with Israel is that it's a democracy. Ultimately, you've got to, whoever is going to champion a plan like this has to convince Israeli voters that a Palestinian state will be good for them and not Gaza Part 2 times 2. And I don't know if saying I don't know, maybe it, is going to do it. How do you actually convince an Israeli voter to go to the polls and elect a politician who's going to willingly withdraw from the West Bank?
Look, when I speak in such a celebrated academic center as Harvard, I have to leave some doubts and to appear somewhat humble and modest. This is not now a campaign meeting.
Okay.
When a campaign meeting comes in, believe me, I'll be a lot more decisive.
I got it.
Okay.
We have a question over here.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Bertina. I'm an MPP student here at HKS. My question was, speaking of building up this credibility, do you see specific figures, both on the Palestinian side and the Israeli side, who could be the next champions of this push forward? Or are we just too far away from building up any kind of trust between the two sides?
Thank you.
It's very hard to give you any specific figures about those in the Palestinian side and those in the Israeli side. I just said earlier today in another meeting here, I know many Palestinians who are absolutely capable of leading the Palestinian cause in the direction that can lead into a genuine, serious compromise with the state of Israel. I think that we have to make every possible effort to reach out for them, and for them to try and reach out for us in order to be able to build it. But this is the ultimate test of leadership, and I hope that the Israeli leaders that will be worthy of the opportunity that they may have when they will be the leaders of the State of Israel, will have the courage, the creativity, the imagination, and the inspirations to do it. But to tell you that I know today, I am afraid that today the majority of the Israelis are still under the trauma of the 7th of October. And therefore, many of them that were where I am are not there now. No one can forget, and no one will ever forgive what they did on the 7th of October. It must be clear. I am criticizing the Israeli government, and you mentioned the fact that I even say that there were crimes committed by us, and I keep saying it, okay? But let's not forget, it all started because of the horrific, barbaric butchering that the Hamas did to thousands of Israeli citizens, not soldiers, not in army barracks, but in their homes, in the living rooms, in the bedrooms. That's how it started. Had it not started, there wouldn't have been a war. There wouldn't have been 65,000 Palestinians being killed by Israel as a result of what started by Hamas, and they are completely, totally responsible for it. No matter what happened later, this is something that must be remembered, and we can't ignore it, okay? Now, one of the outcomes of this was, of course, the trauma of the Israeli people. I know so many people that were on my side that came and said, listen, no more, not anymore. We can't trust them. We can't. Look what they did. We have to overcome this. We have to listen to what President Biden, a man that I love, I have to say. I know him. I know it's not popular now to be in favor. I mean, God forbid, what will happen to me if I go back to Washington on these days. But let me tell you something. Biden was a great Zionist and the greatest friend that Israel ever had in the White House. And I know few that were before him and that were good friends of the State of Israel. None of them was as committed as Joe Biden was. And when he came to Israel 10 days after the war started, first time in the history of the United States that American president came to a battlefield at a time of fighting that was not part of America. And he said to us one thing, which unfortunately we didn't listen to. He said that after the September 11th, America was completely outraged and made few mistakes. And of course, I think he referred to the invasion in Iraq. He said, I advise you, Israelis, don't be consumed by your rage. Don't let yourself lose controls. Be careful. And I'm afraid that we didn't listen to him because things could have developed in somewhat different way that would have less impact on the status of Israel today as it turns out to be, and the divisions within the state of Israel which are polarizing and tearing apart the Israeli society. How do we overcome this trauma in order to return back into a position of dialogue is a major issue that takes all of my time. So I'm trying to do it both in Israel and across the world. I'm trying to convey the message that the state of Israel is not necessarily the state of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. The state of Israel is a country that cares for values, that cares for human lives, that cares for the people that are killed on the other side, because we are not destined to kill and do what they were doing. And that I believe that I represent not just myself, but millions of Israelis that think alike. And I think that the more people across the world will share this, the easier it will be to then overcome this trauma within the state of Israel.
Okay, thank you. I have a question here.
Okay, thank you. Dwight Hutchins, Dean's Counsel, graduate in '96, which meant that my class had the hope of the peace agreement between Arafat and Rabin, and those were crushed when Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated. So I'm looking for hope. You've been impressive, inspiring, and sobering. With the pieces on the chessboard now, how do we get to a permanent, just peace? With the pieces what we have now, the concerns around the electorate in Israel, the environment we're talking about, the concerns for safety. How do we get these chess pieces to a just peace?
And may I just piggyback on that question, just to add a little bit to it? I mean, is the fact that we have this very unpredictable gentleman in the White House an asset for those who want to make peace, or a liability?
He may be an asset, and he may not. And this is the problem that we have with this gentleman, because who is, I'm giving interviews everywhere. They come from every corner of the world. Today, there are all kinds of mediums. There are the televisions, there are the websites, there are online, there are offline, there are prints, there are TikTok, there are everything. And they all, ask this. One of the questions is, what do you think Trump is going to do? And I keep saying, give me a break, Do I know what he's going to do? Does he know what he's going to do? How do I know if he doesn't know? Now, okay, so he's unpredictable, and therefore it's very hard to predict what he may do. I can tell you what he can do. That I know. Perhaps I know better than him. He can force Netanyahu, as he did. What he did was admirable. Admirable. Mr. Security, the most powerful leader of the state of Israel, was sitting in the White House, in the Oval Office, and President Trump took the telephone, held it on his knees, and gave Bibi the telephone and told him, I called the Prime Minister of Qatar, and now I'll tell you, this is what you are going to say to him. And he gave him a piece of paper, and the assistant of the Prime Minister of Qatar was sitting next to him, and he said, he is checking that you will not miss a word, which was dictated by the Qataris, apologizing to them for the Israeli attack in Qatar. And this was the preliminary step towards the agreement, which was dictated again by Trump. So I don't know what he wants, but I can tell you what he can. He can force Netanyahu to embark on a peace process that will change history. Question is, will he do it? He has enough patience to do it? His span of attention is wide enough in order to remember tomorrow that there is still a problem in the Middle East which needs to be resolved, or already he's on the next project. I don't know, building the White House or something else. I don't know. This is the question, but I'll tell you something. You can laugh and you can ridicule your president. Okay, that's your business. But I can tell you one thing. He's the only leader in the world that can force a process and a genuine and serious process to take place here in the Middle East. He's the only one. There is no one of the European leaders, no one of the others can do it. He can do it. He has to decide that this is what he wants to do, and that he has the perseverance and the patience to carry on until it will be accomplished. And I think that it can be accomplished sooner than most people think, if he will decide to do it.
Well, in the first Trump administration, they put a plan forward for a Palestinian state, the Kushner plan, which, Mahmoud Abbas found far inferior, certainly to the plan that you offered. My hunch is that they'll offer some new version of this plan. Do you think the Palestinians would take it?
First of all, one thing you have to remember, I'm sure you do.
We've proven I don't, but
No.
Okay.
You have your limits. I don't. Well, I couldn't say that to Professor Tarek Masoud unless I thought that he's very brilliant. Okay.
Bless you.
In the first deal of the century, which was proposed by Trump in 2020, he talked about a Palestinian state. He talked about the Palestinian state. And my advice then to Abu Mazen was that in spite of the fact that so many other parts of the deal were not exactly what the Palestinian expectation was, that he should not say no, because I thought that if Abu Mazen then would have said, if Netanyahu will say that he accepts this plan on all its aspects, including the two states, I will negotiate with him tomorrow morning, even though I don't like it. But again, he failed. So the question now, if he will be offered a similar plan, will he now say something else? I think that at that time, Trump was not really prepared to use his power of persuasion. And he didn't have the same, by the way. He was already close to the elections. To force not only the Israeli side, but the Palestinian side, to use all these parties, the Qataris, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Turks, the others, the Emiratis, the Saudis, to force the Palestinians to accept something which is reasonable. And of course, the 2020 plan was not reasonable. The Olmert plan is reasonable. And I would be happy if he will take the credit for me and force it on them and get a Nobel Peace Prize.
Does the fact that several European countries have now recognized the state of Palestine, does that help?
I don't think, I talked with some of them. And I think that at the time that I talked to them and together with Nasser al-Kidwa, by the way, and presented them with this, our plan of 2 states. They didn't talk about that. They started to talk about 2 states perhaps somewhat later. And I'm not sure, so of course I am for 2 states and I support 2 states and there is no question about it, but I'm not certain that recognizing a state that doesn't exist was very useful. I mean, I always was scared that they will say, okay, we recognize the state and we'll go home and do some other thing and that will not move. I mean, the challenge here is to try and force the 2 sides to start a dialogue.
Yeah.
And this is perhaps more important than just a general recognition of a state that doesn't exist.
We have a question here.
Thanks. I wanted to ask a few questions about, as Tarek knows, after this I'm going online and arguing on Reddit with people about everything you said. And particularly, I want to get some details right, or basically to press some claims that Tarek gave about your interactions with Abbas. So one thing is that it's going to be a bit hard to articulate, but you say that on the one hand, with the maps, you didn't want to give him the map because then he might have not followed through on it and taken it like 2 years later, and that would be like the starting point. But then you said that you think that he should have taken the deal even though there was some probability, high probability maybe, that it wouldn't go through because you were on your way out. And so couldn't you also say that, you know, the reason that he didn't want to take the deal thinking it might not go through is that regardless of what the world is going to think about Israel, if Israel kind of reneges, the next sort of starting point will be that the Palestinians have given up on the right of return and given up on, like, you know, the rest of the land. And furthermore, he would kind of make this concession, and all the Palestinians will see you made this concession and you sort of, injured our pride, but you didn't actually get a deal. So that's one point. And the second point is, Tarek mentioned that Palestinians have claimed that your advisors have gone to Abbas later and told him that not to take the deal, he would get a better deal later. So also your comment on that.
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. So,
why? It's the same question that you asked.
No, but he's saying that Abbas, basically, if Abbas signed on to your deal, it probably wouldn't work, but it would have been him signing off to giving up the right of return.
Number one, if the Palestinians will insist on the right of return, there will never be peace. All right? It's as simple as that. Now, when I started the negotiating process with Abu Mazen, the first thing that I say to him on the first night that we met on the 23rd of December 2006, I still have a vivid memory of that evening. Okay? At the end of dinner, when, after talking and all kind of things for 2 hours and more, we went into the study. There were just the 2 of us. And I said to him, President, everything is on the table. I'm ready to discuss everything. Jerusalem, borders, refugees, everything, okay? And he said to me, this is at the beginning of the negotiating process. Look, of course, we don't expect to have all the refugees back. We don't want to change the nature of the state of Israel. We need a symbolic gesture, okay? And throughout the negotiating process, there were times when these issues came up again, and then not only the Americans, but Arabs and Palestinians say to Abu Mazen, we don't understand. How can we, the Palestinians, talk about the right of return when we want to establish a Palestinian state? We want to establish a Palestinian state, or the Palestinians will not live in the Palestinian state, that they will live in another country? So, listen, for him to sign that agreement then, to agree to that plan that I presented, with the risk of accepting the right of return will not be implemented completely, I don't think that it was a big risk, and I don't think, okay? I don't think that there was any chance ever, there will never be, to make an agreement on a different basis. There will never be a right of return for the Palestinians to where they lived before 48. They will live in a Palestinian state.
But that would be the new starting point of the new negotiations. And now halfway would be to go halfway between definitely no right of return to whatever Israel wants.
You want to argue with me, that's fine.
Okay, so
I'd be happy even to listen to you a lot if you want to. But I'm expressing my opinion, not yours.
We're coming to the end of time. Can I take one more question over here?
I have, Tarek, I have a lot of time.
Hi. I'm Hannah. I'm a law student, and I was under the impression that Teddy Kollek was the best mayor of Jerusalem. Sorry. And that...
Until you met me, right?
And that during your time in office, I know you said that you invested a lot in East Jerusalem and opened 10 schools, but also that's when there was a lot of settlement expansion in Silwan and also a lot of increased home demolitions in Issaouia and Silwan. And now today, there's like the E1 plan is going to pass, and I know that, I don't know if it was foreseeable to you how Jerusalem and East Jerusalem would look now, and how that would complicate future peace agreements, especially regarding the issue of a divided Jerusalem. So could you talk a little bit about your time more as mayor of Jerusalem and also the state of Jerusalem now in peace agreements?
Thank you.
Finally. I was looking for her all this evening. That someone will come and blame me for being too hawkish. So finally I got one. Look, at the time that I was mayor, there were occasional difficulties and problems, but I think that by and large, the time that I was mayor I believe is remembered as a time that there was a genuine effort to try and change the quality of life of the people living in the east side of Jerusalem. And we made extraordinary efforts. But as I said, one of my conclusions as a result of my personal experience was that it will be impossible to really unite the city of Jerusalem as we were pretending to say that we are doing, and therefore it helped me get to the inevitable conclusion that we have to divide it and to let the Arabs build their city as that part of the city, as their capital, as part of a comprehensive solution. So I think that I did many things in order to change the quality of life there in many different neighborhoods of Jerusalem, on the east side of Jerusalem, the Beit Hanina and the Shuafat and the Issaouia and the Jabal Mukabe and the others. But it's true that the gap between the west side and the east side was such that it led me to the inevitable conclusion to go much further than just the technical changes and the urban changes in the city, but into a much larger, broader political solution.
So, Ehud Olmert, I think you can judge by the questions and by the large number of people who are queued up to ask you questions that we could go for a lot longer. Your title is former prime minister, my title is professor, but I think all of the members of our audience would agree that you were the professor this evening. And so please, everybody, join me in thanking Ehud Olmert.